the one, the only, Ben Sion. Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, Just Daf It. Today we're doing Nazir Daf Nun Aleph, number 51. As we continue talking about everyone's favorite topic, corpses, dead people, the dust of dead people, how much or what parts of the body can actually form that dust. Mali Tarvud Rekev, spoonful, a palmful yesterday we learned, or a handful, according to Rabbi Yochanan, of dirt or dust which comes from a dead person. Let's start at the top of Nun Aleph. Tana Rabbanan. Ezu Meish Yishal Rekev. What is the type of corpse which is considered valid rekev to matamayu, and for the purposes of Maseches Nazir to tell you that a Nazir is megaleach, it interrupts his count. He has to start over. Meisha Nikbar Arum, Aron Sheish Lo Shayish. A dead person was buried naked, in a marble coffin, or agabe ritzba shalavon, or on a stone floor. Zel Meish Yeish Lo Rekev. That's where the tumas of dust applies. Nikbar B'Ksuso. Now, most people are buried in burial shrouds, so this is, for us, practically, Nikbar B'Ksuso, Ba'aron Shalates, or Gabi Ritzba, or even if he's buried naked, but it's in a wooden coffin, or Gabi Ritzba, or he's buried Ritzba Shalavenim, the floor is brick, Zeo Me Shein Lo Rekev. There's no din of Male Tarvid Rekev, a din of a handful of dirt, of dust from a dead person. The reason being is because it has to be pure dust from the dead person, and if he's buried in a burial shroud, that's included in the dust, right? Wood decomposes, and also bricks give off brick dust. We're going to learn through this whole daf that if it has to be pure, it's not ashes, right? Cremation, we'll see, is not a valid form of Malitar B'Rekev. However, dust can't have anything mixed into it. We'll see that's the theme through the whole daf. Amar Ula, Ein Rekev Ela Habam and Abasar Menagidim and Atzamos. It has to come from all three together. The dirt has to come, the dust has to come from decomposed flesh, which is basically the muscles and fat, the gidim, the sinews, which really means the tendons, the ligaments, things like that. Uminat samos and blood vessels. Uminat samos and from the bones. Rava asked on Ula rek of abominable basar tor. If the wreck of the dust, the corpse dust, comes from just the flesh, from the muscle and the fats, that's tor. That's not matame. Hamina etzem tame. However, if it comes from the bones by itself, seemingly it's tame. The avagat like a basar, even doesn't have basar, and also the gidin. So then, where's the emahachi rek of abominable basar tor? No, the Bryce didn't mean to say that with the etzem by itself, from bones decomposing themselves, forming dust, is matame. You need basar and etzem. Also, gidin are really part of that atzamos, right? They connect, ligaments connect bones together, and tendons connect muscles to the bones. Go back to biology class if you don't remember that. But I remember that was because my initials are BL, so bones, ligaments. That was my mnemonic for always remembering the difference between ligaments and tendons. All right. So that's the Gemara's next question. How like a gidim? I'm sorry, the Gemara asked this question. The Gemara says, "What about the gidim?" The Gemara says, below gidim. It's impossible to have basar and atzamos without actual having ligaments and tendons. If you have flesh and you have bones, you probably have the stuff that puts them together, puts the bones together, and attaches the muscles to the flesh, to the muscles. Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Abba Amar Yochanan Shnei Mesim Shekavran Zaim Zeh. Let's say you bury two people in the same coffin next to each other. Naso Gilgalin Zelazeh. We're going to see throughout this stuff. Gilgalin means it's a mixture. It's a mixture, and when you have a mixture, it ruins the ability to matame. I'll explain to you, Ben Sion, why mixtures, if it's not pure corpse dust, then it's not matame, and why the word Gilgal, it sounds like wheel, or Gilgul, reincarnation. We'll talk about that, how it's related. Mezer of Nasa, Rekav Abami Shnei Mesim Tame. The Brisa says, it comes from two Mesim, it is Tame. So what are you saying? They're buried together as Tame, Tame, Rabba, Shekivru Zebif Neato Zeb Nasa. The Brisa is talking about where each person was buried separately. They're Kivu, and they both decomposed. And then you put them together. Al no Amali Tarvid Rekav. That's where you could add the two together to form a fistful of dust. When they decompose by themselves, decompose together, that's considered a mixture. I'm a Rab Barachan, I'm a Yochanan, Gaza Saro, the Kavro, Imo, Naslo Gagalin. You cut off the hair and you bury the person with hair that was cut off, shorn, right? So the hair becomes a mixture with decomposition of his body, and therefore it's not Matami. It's not Hassam. We're learning the Mishnah over there. Los Kol Shema Meis Tame, Chutz Min Hashinayim V'Asar V'Siporin. Everything in the mace makes tuma, except from the teeth and the hair and the fingernails. Buran, kulan tmein. That's only when you separate and you took out the teeth or you took out the hair or the nails before you died, and you buried them alongside of it. However, if they're attached to them, they're tmein. So by Chizkiah asked on that Mishnah, Saro ha'omid legaleach, he has very long hair, right? It's ready to be cut off. Siporin ha'omid legazes, or he has nails that are ready to be cut. I'm reading on Kol ha'omid legazes dummy. Since it's ready to be cut, right? He's grown the nails for 3 weeks, ready to be cut. It's like it's already cut. Now it's presently connected. So the Gemara says, let's answer the question of Rabbi Barachana before. Time of Mishum the Gazos. The reason, right, it's considered a mixture, Gilgalin, is because he cut the hair off and he buried him with the hair. How low Gazos? If he didn't cut it, low. Even if it's presumably in all cases where he didn't cut it, even if it's omeli gazes, even if it's ready to be cut. Lo hachi gamar gazes harezia gilgalim. All the Bryce and the Mishnah to say if he cut it off, it's a mixture. Lo gazes mi bayale. However, if it wasn't cut off, but it's ready to be cut off, that is still a question to him. So we can't answer. But Rabbi Yirmiyah rekav abamina ekiv mahu. Dust which comes from a decomposed ankle. Mahu. Kigamri and Rekav Abami Kule Mace. Right? It has to come from the entire body. All the Asim and Ekav. You know if it's short coming from one place in the body, low. I'll discuss it in the Mensi and why the Gemara picks on Akev over here, the Achilles heel. That's a little hint to what I'm going to say. Odilma lo shnar. Maybe it doesn't make a difference. Tashma, the Tani, Rav Nasam, Rav Shaya, Rekav Abami Shnei Mesim, Tamid. If it came, we had this Mishnah before, this Brisa before. If it comes from two different people, it's Tamid. Right, as long as they weren't buried together. If you'll tell me that if the dust comes purely from the ankle, it's not matame. Right. The Brisa there says it's tami bavadai. It's tami bavadai. Right. Up until now, we've been saying when a person decomposes, it's tami. Right. At least misafek it's tame. But here he says it's tame vadai, and that Brisa was telling you even if you go into the azar, you bring a chatas. If you touched the dust and you went into the azara, the shogi, you become a carbon chatas. You only bring a korban in Torah's vada. Otherwise, it's safek. You're bringing chul na azara. So maybe the one of the bodies that was decomposed came purely from the heel. So the might either erkev kule meis v'kasa yarachechev hachanami. Right, if the entire body decomposed, and we are assuming maybe the heel maybe for some reason decomposes faster. Maybe it came from the ego. Haka going to erkev chad aver v'kasa. Normally, by a whole body, we don't assume that because the whole body, so the decomposed dust can come from anywhere. Haka going to erkev chad aver v'kasa yarachechev. Here we're talking about a case where you just had a foot, right? Only the foot decomposed. You look at the corpse. I don't know if you'd exhume the corpse. The foot decomposed. Did it come purely from the ankle, or did it come also from the rest of the foot? Teku. In that case, we're not sure. I'll explain what the suffix is by Akev. Why is Akev more significant than the rest of the body? Let's say a woman died and she was pregnant when she died. Right? So does the fetus inside of her stomach, is that considered a mixture or not? Although, right, we have machlokas in the Gemara elsewhere. The Gemara says whether a fetus is considered like the limb of a mother. So basically, that's right. we poskin like that, so it's considered like the limb of a mother. Hilka gufaho. It's like her body, and it should be matame, but love the it's not a mixture. Dilma came on the sofa lattes, but since right, it eventually, if she were living, it would eventually come out. Mifresh parishmina, it's not considered part of her, and therefore it wouldn't be. It would be a mixture. Uber the sofa lattes mifresh parishmina. If you'll conclusively say that since it would come out if she were alive, it's not considered part of her, and therefore it's a mixture. Top of Nanalef and base. Shikla Zerb Isha. Let's say she was together with her husband, and then she died, and she had Shikla Zera, presumably within the first 3 days. The Gemara Shabbos is only considered Shikla Zera in the first 3 days because it can only impregnate an egg if it's live within 3 days. So she died within 3 days. At that point, right, she's dead, so it's not going to create any. Her eggs are dead also, so therefore it's not going to create a baby. Kigufa dami. So therefore it's just something part of her body. Odilma came on almakas since it comes from outer from the husband. Low. Maybe it's a mixture. The murder doesn't answer that. What about her excrement? Right, she ate some food, and she has some excrement built up in her, and she didn't go to the bathroom, and then she died. Since a woman has to, any person, you can't live without eating. Chiyusahu is part of your life. It's essential to your life, and therefore it's like part of your body. Maybe it comes from food, which is outside your body. What about the skin of a person? Is that considered mixture with the person? There's a machlokes elsewhere in Sekas Nida whether the skin of a person is matame or not, like the basar, like the flesh of a person. Here we're assuming the or is not matame, but once it's mixed in, is it considered a mixture or not? The Gemara is going to say, obviously, in most cases, the skin is on the body. This is obviously a unique question. What about he has saliva and mucus in his mouth when he dies? Is that considered a mixture or not? If you say all these things, the saliva, the mucus, the shevazera, the excrement, the skin, they're considered a mixture. It's almost impossible to find a decomposed body where you don't have any of these things mixed in. So the Gemara says it must be talking case the Ashkia made the kolim. You gave him water came from the juice that comes from palm trees, Visaki and Asha, and you put the laboratory cream on his head, so he has no hair. He went to the bathroom because he had made the kolim, which basically makes him go to the bathroom. V'shalko b'mei tveria, and you let his body soak in mei tveria, where basically it kills the skin. It's very hot in Tveria. Tveria is always very hot, especially during the summer, and the Kinneret there gets actually very hot. So he stayed in that water over there, so it's burnt his skin. So the skin is not considered real skin. Only in that case, obviously, those things wouldn't be mixed in, and therefore it's possible to have tuma mali tarvid rekav. Amar Abaye naktinan meisha takno ein la rekav. We have alachim. So if you grind up a mace, similarly, if you cremate somebody, right, that's not considered dash, not considered ashes. It's not considered something matame. Yibalu takno v'chazor v'hirkiv. Let's say you started to grind it up, and then you didn't fully grind up the body, and then it decomposed by itself. Right? The whole reason it's matame is you need a combination of flesh and sinews and bones, and you have it. Dilma kibriyasa, maybe it has to decompose from being a complete person. Since you started grinding up, it's not a complete person when you started. Veleka, Teku. Mar says Teku. We're not sure about this or any of the previous questions. Tani Ula. We're waiting for Eliyahu to come. Tani Ula bar Chanina Masha Chasar Meisha Chasar in la Rekav. A dead person. Ula bar Chanina teaches on a brisa. A dead person shachasar, meaning a limb of his body was cut off during his lifetime. Right? He doesn't have all the limbs of his body, and then he died. Ein lo rekav. There's no din of decomposition over there. The dust that comes from decomposition is not matame. Velo tfusa. Not only that, he also doesn't have tfusa, which basically means that when you bury somebody and you want to exhume them and bury them somewhere else, you have to take the dirt that's around them and bury them with that. So if he's not a complete person, you don't have to take the dirt with him. Below shchunas kvaros. Also, there's halacha. If you have three people buried in one area with all the halachas of a Jewish cemetery, so three whole people buried together, then you have to treat the surrounding area like a cemetery, and you have to and certain halachas apply. So the halacha is that if it's not a complete person, he's missing a limb, right? Then you only have two people, 2.5 people. So it's not a shkunas hakvaros. Mezive. We asked on this brayz, Elohim Amar, a brayz says Elohim Amar is b'mei sheyesh lo rov v'rova omali tarvid rekav, right? Don't compare the case of a dead person. In the case of a dead person, he has certain ways of being tame. First, like a rove of his bones, rove of his binyano or minyano, rove most of the bones in his body, or rove binyano, significant most of the build of his body, a rova, or you have bones that are scattered throughout the body, but they weigh, right, a fourth of a kav, omali tarvid rekav, or you have a handful of dust. Tomer b'chai, say by a living person, we're talking about a part of a living person that's cut off, and therefore is decomposing. She'ein lo rov, below rov, below omali tarvid rekav. So what is this price talking about? Hikidami. The erkev chad aver, obviously it's talking about, right, there's no decomposition if the person's living, so it must be one of his limbs was cut off and it starts decomposing. The kavasagabe mace, by a mace, afilu chad aver, ika rekav. Right, so we're talking about a case of one limb, so therefore it's comparing a dead person to a live person. A live person who cuts off one limb, right, so there's no tumah. But a dead person who cuts off one limb, there is tumah. So you see, even if the person's not complete, there is tumah. Mikazani hames doesn't say it, but the mace. Hakamash Milan. What does it mean? Shul mace yesh lo rekav. It's not talking about. It doesn't mean to compare the cases exactly. It's saying in all the cases of dead person, yesh lo rekav, shum chai ein lo rekav. There's no case of a chai. The only case of a chai where you're going to have a possibility of decomposition is when the person's limb is cut off and it decomposes. But mace is not meant to compare that. Mace is talking about a whole dead body. By Rava. Rava asked the following question: Hirkiv kishu chai. He was living, and a limb fell off, and it decomposed because of a mace, and then he died, and you buried him together with that limb that was decomposed. Mahu, kikviri rekiv the erkiv kishu mace, right? Odilma hashta mia hamayas, right? Do you need the whole body decomposed together, or do we say no? That now he died, so you can put the limb that was removed with the rest of the dead body, and they decompose both of them. Tashma. So we bring from the same price. Alom Amras Meshi Yeshla Rova Mali Tavid Rekav Tomer B'cha. You can't compare a living person to a dead person, meaning a decomposed limb of a living person with a dead person. Taima Mishum Chai Hamesh Yeshla Rekav. Right? Like the same inference the Gemara made, right? It's because he's a living person, right? But if he died, right, Yeshla Rekav. So therefore, even if he lost a limb and then he died afterward, that should be good enough, right? Even though decomposed separately, he was buried not complete, but still his body decomposed, and the aver that was cut off decomposed, and he's dead now. So the Gemara again rejects it with the same story. Mikasani hames, it doesn't say the word hames. Hakamash malan, the shum mes yesh lo rekav, shum chai ein lo rekav. It's talking about a dead person in general. And the only type of dead person it's talking about in general is talking about a dead person that dies complete. If a limb is cut off, even if he then subsequently dies and you bury him together with the limb and they both decompose, that would not be enough to suffice to form rekav, right? As opposed to a chai. The only case of a chai is talking about when you cut off a limb while he's alive and it decomposes. But they're not comparable, not talking about the exact same case. We're going to stop over here. A new question by Rava. I want to talk today in Iyun Ben Sion about Gilgulin. The whole theme of this Gemara is that if you have parts of the body that are not subject to tumah, that are mixed in with parts that are subject to tumah, it ruins it, and it's not matame. It ruins it, or actually helps it. That it's not matame. What does the word Gilgulin come from? It's not really clear. The Rishonim don't really know. And why is it that a mixture is not matame? We'll talk about that Iyun with Ben Sion coming up next.